Imagine this, a routine traffic stop on a quiet suburban street. The flashing lights of a police cruiser illuminate the night as an officer approaches a car, his hand resting on his holster. Inside the vehicle sits a black woman, calm but visibly frustrated. What happens next will shock you to your core. This isn't just another story about a traffic stop gone wrong. It's a tale of power, identity, and a shocking twist that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about authority, justice, and the systems that govern our lives. By the end of this video, you'll get the answers you've been searching for, the kind of answers that keep you up at night, wondering how something like this could even happen. But here's the thing, you're not just going to watch this story unfold, you're going to feel it. You're going to be right there in the passenger seat, your heart racing as the tension builds. And trust me, you won't want to look away. Let me ask you something, have you ever felt powerless? Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you were right, but no one would listen? If so, then you're going to connect with this story on a deeply personal level. Because this isn't just about a woman being pulled over by a police officer, it's about what happens when the tables are turned, when the person in power suddenly finds themselves at the mercy of someone they underestimated. It's about the moment when the mask slips, and the truth comes crashing down like a ton of bricks. And here's the kicker. You're about to witness a moment that will challenge everything you think you know about power dynamics in America. Now, let's talk about the key players in this story. First, there's the officer, a seasoned law enforcement professional who's seen it all, or so he thinks. He's confident, maybe even a little too confident, in his ability to read people and situations. Then, there's the woman in the car. At first glance, she's just another driver who made a minor mistake on the road. But as the story unfolds, you'll quickly realize that she's anything but ordinary. She's sharp, composed, and carries an air of authority that's impossible to ignore. And then there's the system itself, the invisible force that shapes every interaction, every decision, and every outcome. It's a system that's supposed to protect us, but as you'll see, it doesn't always work the way it should. As we dive deeper into this story, I want you to keep something in mind. This isn't just about one woman or one officer. It's about all of us. It's about the assumptions we make, the biases we carry, and the ways in which we navigate a world that's often unfair and unpredictable. It's about the moments that define us, the choices we make, and the consequences that follow. And most importantly, it's about the truth, the kind of truth that can't be ignored, no matter how hard we try. So, what happens when an officer arrests a black woman, unaware that she's a powerful district attorney? What happens when the person he's trying to control turns out to be the one person who can turn his world upside down? You're about to find out. But here's the thing, this story isn't just about the arrest. It's about what happens next. It's about the confrontation, the revelation, and the fallout that follows. It's about the moment when everything changes, and nothing will ever be the same again. As we move forward, I want you to think about the power of perception. How often do we judge people based on what we see, rather than who they really are? How often do we let our biases cloud our judgment, even when the truth is staring us right in the face? These are the questions that this story forces us to confront. And by the time we reach the end, you'll have a whole new perspective on what it means to have power and what it means to lose it. But before we get to the climax, let's set the stage. Picture this, it's a quiet evening, the kind of evening where nothing much happens. The streets are empty, the air is still, and the world feels like it's holding its breath. And then, out of nowhere, the silence is shattered by the sound of sirens. A car is pulled over, and the officer approaches, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The woman inside the car rolls down her window, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of frustration and defiance. What happens next will change both of their lives forever. So, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think the officer will realize his mistake before it's too late? Or will he double down, refusing to back down even when the truth is staring him in the face? And what about the woman? Will she use her power to teach him a lesson, or will she show him mercy, proving that true power lies in compassion? These are the questions that will keep you on the edge of your seat as we unravel this story together. But before we get to the climax, let's set the stage. Picture this. It's a quiet evening, the kind of evening where nothing much happens. The streets are empty, the air is still, and the world feels like it's holding its breath. And then, out of nowhere, the silence is shattered by the sound of sirens. A car is pulled over, and the officer approaches, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The woman inside the car rolls down her window, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of frustration and defiance. What happens next will change both of their lives forever. So, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think the officer will realize his mistake before it's too late? Or will he double down, refusing to back down even when the truth is staring him in the face? And what about the woman? Will she use her power to teach him a lesson, or will she show him mercy, proving that true power lies in compassion? These are the questions that will keep you on the edge of your seat as we unravel this story together. But here's the thing, I'm not going to give you all the answers right away. Because the best stories are the ones that keep you guessing, the ones that pull you in and refuse to let go until the very end. And this story? It's one of those. So buckle up because you're in for a wild ride. And remember, by the time we reach the end, you'll have the answers you've been searching for. But until then, all you can do is wait, watch, and wonder, what would you do if you were in her shoes? And just when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think you know how this story ends, think again. Because the truth is stranger than fiction, and the final twist? Well, let's just say it's going to blow your mind. But you'll have to keep watching to find out what happens next. The quiet suburban street where this story unfolds is more than just a backdrop. It's a character in its own right. Nestled in a town where everyone seems to know everyone, this neighborhood is the kind of place where people wave to each other from their porches and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. But beneath the surface of this idyllic community lies a tension that's been simmering for years. It's the kind of tension that doesn't make headlines, but lingers in the air, waiting for the right moment to explode. And tonight, that moment has arrived. The officer, whose name is Greg Harris, has been on the force for over a decade. He's seen his share of trouble, but he's always prided himself on his ability to handle any situation with calm and control. He's the kind of cop who believes in the system, who thinks that if you follow the rules, everything will work out in the end. But what happens when the rules themselves are flawed? What happens when the system you've dedicated your life to upholding turns out to be anything but just? These are questions Greg has never had to face until now. The woman in the car, whose name is Alicia Monroe, is no ordinary driver. She's the newly elected district attorney for the county, a position she's worked tirelessly to achieve. Alicia is a force to be reckoned with, sharp, determined, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. She spent her career fighting for justice, often taking on cases that others would rather ignore. But tonight, she's not in her office or a courtroom. She's just a woman driving home after a long day, trying to unwind and clear her head. What she doesn't know is that her night is about to take a dramatic turn, one that will test her patience, her principles, and her power in ways she never imagined. As Greg approaches the car, his flashlight illuminating the interior, he notices Alicia's posture calm but firm, her hands resting on the steering wheel. There's something about her demeanor that throws him off, something that doesn't quite fit the profile of someone who's just been pulled over. But Greg pushes the thought aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. He asks for her license and registration, his tone professional but tinged with an edge of suspicion. Alicia complies, handing over the documents without a word. But as Greg looks them over, something catches his eye, a detail that doesn't add up. It's small, almost insignificant, but it's enough to make him question everything he thought he knew about this situation. Meanwhile, Alicia is growing increasingly frustrated. She knows she hasn't done anything wrong, and she can't understand why she's being treated this way. But she also knows that, as a Black woman, she's all too familiar with the kind of bias that can turn a routine traffic stop into something much more serious. She's spent her career fighting against systemic injustice, but now, for the first time, she's experiencing it firsthand. And it's a feeling she won't soon forget. As the minutes tick by, the tension between them grows, each moment stretching out like a rubber band about to snap. But this story isn't just about Greg and Alicia. It's also about the people watching from the sidelines, the neighbors peeking through their curtains, the passerby who stops to see what's going on, the dispatcher listening in on the radio. Each of them has their own perspective, their own biases, and their own assumptions about what's happening. And as the situation escalates, those perspectives will collide in ways that no one could have predicted. There's Mrs. Thompson, the elderly widow who's lived on this street for decades and thinks she's seen it all. There's Jake, the teenage boy who's recording the whole thing on his phone, already imagining the likes and shares he'll get when he posts it online. And then there's Officer Ramirez, Greg's partner, who's on his way to the scene but doesn't yet know what he's walking into. As the night wears on, the stakes continue to rise. Greg's initial suspicion has turned into something more, a determination to prove that he's in control, that he's the one who calls the shots. But Alicia isn't backing down. She knows her rights, and she's not about to let anyone trample on them, no matter who they are. The confrontation between them becomes a battle of wills, each one refusing to give an inch. And as the tension reaches its peak, a new layer of mystery is revealed, one that neither of them saw coming. What neither Greg nor Alicia realizes is that this night is about to become a turning point, not just for them, but for the entire community. The choices they make in the next few minutes will have ripple effects that extend far beyond this quiet suburban street. And as the truth begins to unravel, it becomes clear that nothing is as it seems. There are secrets here, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. And when they finally come to light, they'll change everything. But for now, the tension continues to build, the clock ticking down to a moment that will leave everyone breathless. Greg is standing at a crossroads, his instincts telling him one thing, but his training telling him another. Alicia is holding her ground, her mind racing as she tries to figure out her next move. And the people watching from the sidelines are holding their breath, waiting to see how this will all play out. The question is no longer just about who's right and who's wrong. It's about what happens when the lines between power and justice blur, when the system we rely on to protect us becomes the very thing that threatens to tear us apart. And then, just when it seems like things can't get any more intense, a new piece of information comes to light, one that changes everything. But before anyone can process what's happening, the situation takes another unexpected turn. The stakes are higher than ever, and the outcome is anything but certain. What happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power, justice, and the world we live in. But for now, all you can do is wait, watch, and wonder, how will this all end? And more importantly, what would you do if you were in their shoes? The answers are coming, but not yet. The story isn't over, it's only just begun. As the standoff between Greg and Alicia reaches its boiling point, the atmosphere on the quiet suburban street grows heavier, almost suffocating. The flashing lights of the police cruiser cast long shadows across the pavement, and the low hum of the engine is the only sound breaking the silence. Greg's voice, now sharper and more insistent, demands that Alicia step out of the car. His training tells him to maintain control, but there's a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a hesitation that Alicia notices immediately. She complies, slowly opening the door and stepping onto the pavement, her movements deliberate and measured. She knows this is a critical moment, one that could escalate in an instant if she makes the wrong move. But Alicia is no stranger to high-pressure situations, and she's determined to handle this with the same poise she brings to the courtroom. What she doesn't know is that Greg is about to make a decision that will change everything. Just as Alicia steps out of the car, a voice crackles over Greg's radio. It's Officer Ramirez, his partner, who's finally arrived on the scene. Ramirez takes one look at Alicia and freezes. He recognizes her instantly, not just as the district attorney, but as someone who's been a vocal advocate for police reform in the county. Ramirez's mind races as he tries to process what's happening. He knows Greg well enough to sense that his partner is on edge, and he can see the tension radiating between Greg and Alicia. But before Ramirez can intervene, Greg makes his move. In a moment of misguided authority, he reaches for his handcuffs, his voice firm as he informs Alicia that she's under arrest. The words hang in the air like a thunderclap, and for a split second, everyone on the street seems to hold their breath. Alicia's eyes widen in disbelief, but she doesn't resist. Instead, she locks eyes with Greg and says something that stops him cold. "Do you even know who I am?" The question echoes in the stillness, and for the first time, Greg hesitates. There's something in Alicia's tone, a quiet confidence, a hint of authority that cuts through his resolve. But before he can respond, Ramirez steps forward, his voice urgent as he tries to defuse the situation. "Greg, stop. You don't want to do this," he says, his words laced with warning. Greg looks at his partner, confused and frustrated, but Ramirez doesn't back down. He knows what's at stake, and he knows that if Greg goes through with this, there's no turning back. Meanwhile, the small crowd that's gathered on the street is buzzing with speculation. Jake, the teenager with his phone still recording, is already uploading the footage to social media, his fingers flying across the screen as he adds a caption that's sure to go viral. Mrs. Thompson watches from her porch, her heart pounding as she wonders if she should call anyone to help. And Alicia, standing tall despite the handcuffs now clasped around her wrists, is calculating her next move. She knows this isn't just about her anymore. It's about something much bigger. As the tension mounts, a new layer of the story begins to unfold. Unbeknownst to Greg, Alicia has been working on a high-profile case that's set to shake the foundations of the local justice system. It's a case that involves allegations of corruption within the police department, and Alicia has been gathering evidence for months. The timing of this traffic stop on the eve of a major court hearing is more than just a coincidence. It's a twist of fate that raises questions neither Greg nor Alicia can ignore. Could this be an attempt to intimidate her? Or is it simply a case of bad timing? The answers are unclear, but one thing is certain: the stakes have just gotten a lot higher. Meanwhile, Ramirez is trying to piece together what's happening. He pulls Greg aside, his voice low but intense, as he explains who Alicia is and why arresting her could have catastrophic consequences. Greg's face pales as the reality of the situation sinks in. He's spent his career believing in the system, trusting that his badge and his training would always guide him in the right direction. But now, for the first time, he's questioning everything. The weight of his actions presses down on him, and he realizes that he's standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong step away from falling into the abyss. But it's not just his career on the line, it's his integrity, his sense of self, and the trust of the community he's sworn to protect. Alicia, for her part, is already thinking several steps ahead. She knows that this incident, if handled poorly, could derail the case she's been building for months. But she also knows that it could be an opportunity, a chance to shine a light on the very issues she's been fighting against. As she stands there, handcuffed but unbowed, she begins to formulate a plan. She's not just a district attorney, she's a strategist, a fighter, and someone who knows how to turn adversity into advantage. But even she can't predict what's coming next. Just as it seems like the situation might de-escalate, a new player enters the scene. A black SUV pulls up to the curb, and out steps Marcus Cole, a prominent civil rights attorney who's been a longtime ally of Alicia's. Marcus takes one look at the scene and immediately understands what's happening. His presence adds a new dynamic to the situation, one that raises the stakes even further. Marcus is known for his fiery rhetoric and his willingness to take on powerful institutions, and he's not about to let this slide. He approaches Greg and Ramirez, his voice calm but firm as he demands an explanation. The tension between the three men is palpable, and it's clear that this confrontation is far from over. As the night wears on, the story continues to unravel in ways no one could have predicted. The quiet suburban street, once a symbol of peace and stability, has become a battleground, a microcosm of the larger struggles playing out across the country. The choices made in the next few minutes will have far-reaching consequences, not just for Greg and Alicia, but for everyone involved. And as the truth begins to emerge, it becomes clear that this is more than just a story about a traffic stop gone wrong. It's a story about power, justice, and the fragile balance between them. It's a story that challenges us to confront our biases, to question the systems we've built, and to ask ourselves what we're willing to fight for. But for now, the outcome remains uncertain. Greg is grappling with the weight of his decisions. Alicia is strategizing her next move, and Marcus is ready to take on the system. The crowd on the street is growing, their whispers turning into murmurs of outrage and disbelief. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of approaching sirens signals that this night is far from over. The question is no longer just about what happened, it's about what happens next. And as the tension continues to build, one thing is clear: this story is about to take a turn that no one saw coming. But for now, all you can do is wait, watch, and wonder, how will it all end? The answers are coming, but not yet. The climax is just around the corner, and when it hits, it's going to change everything.